Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas.
So Venerable is in Michigan this weekend at the Fetzer Institute with her cohort. We'll be returning this afternoon or this evening. So here we are. And I'm wondering if you all experienced the big winds these last few days. Y'all experienced? You did?
Yeah, it blew my black house over the top.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, of the RV.
Huh?
I was great. Well, I went out and pulled it over and put some lights in it. Anchored well.
Great. Any other people have damage? Anticipate damage? The other morning, I woke up, it was early, and it was dark, and the wind was just whipping through. Waking up to wild winds was kind of interesting. Part of me liked it, and part of me was like, oh no. I began to wonder, are we gonna lose power? Because it was that big. And then I began to wonder, if we lose power, power is connected to heat at the monastery. And then I thought, wow, we might lose heat. Well, we have the fireplace, it's gas. And with that came the vicissitudes of what happens when power goes and all sorts of other things happen. Trees go down. What if the tree comes down and hits? What if? You ever do that? You ever go traveling down, journey through all the vicissitudes, the what ifs, the what will happen, then what? The winds died down. We still had power. The sun still wasn't up, but everything was okay. I got caught in the pattern. I got caught in the story. And then I realized, metaphorically and for real, it was the 8 worldly winds. The 8 worldly winds. So today I want to spend some time with you all talking about the 8 worldly winds. We talk about them. We probably even know what they are, or at least some of them. But I want to get to just beyond the knowing of what they're called. And just knowing that they exist is not enough. More importantly, I want to explore when they show up, how they show up. And finally, I want to talk about what we can learn, what we can do, instead of just being tossed about when they show up. So I'll just ask, who knows, can anybody tell me what at least two of them are?
Praise and blame.
Praise and blame. What do you think we need?
Gain and loss.
Gain and loss. And they kind of pattern with each other, right?
Fame and shame.
Fame and shame.
Pleasure, pain.
Okay, we've got to talk loud because we don't have mics up.
Pleasure, pain.
Pleasure, pain. Praise and blame. Pleasure and pain. Gain and loss. Fame and what's often called disrepute or dishonor. Anybody ever experienced those? Yeah. Okay, so what I want to do is talk about, and we'll need to use the mic unless you're really willing to talk loud, about this last week. This last week. And just take a minute to think about where any of these showed up for you. Praise and blame, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, fame and disrepute. And then if you're willing to share, I would appreciate it.
This is minor in life. But yesterday, 2 days ago, our remote for the TV stopped working. And so yesterday, I must have spent an hour and a half talking to Comporium, then to Amazon, then to Vizio. You know how it goes, one after another. I'll give you a telephone number, and then you start all over. And in the end, as of today, it is still not resolved. So, pain of a minor level, but pain.
Anything else?
Frustration.
Anything else come along with pain?
Or just frustration. I mean, it wasn't major. It was just a waste of time, something to have to deal with that I wish I didn't have to waste my time on. And I miss, we have another television. So, but it meant a change in our routine because we have another television. So since we generally watch different TVs at the same time, one of us had to give it up.
So lost.
So that the other one could watch what they wanted to watch. It wasn't pain, it was just kind of, disgruntled? Just, things aren't the same. It's impermanent.
So then what happened? What did you do with that?
Oh, I accepted it all the way through. I was noticing it
Okay.
and accepting it. So I didn't follow the path of what.
Or who.
Yeah.
Or why.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, why?
Okay.
Yeah. But I was okay with it, found other things to do and just went on with it.
Okay.
But noticed it.
Okay.
Well, just this morning, I went to a Kundalini class here in town, and it's a practice that I did daily when I lived in Austin a couple decades ago.
Hold it in front of your lips. Thank you.
It's a practice I did daily a couple decades ago. And so the gain is that I found a class and I got to return to something that I find very connecting within and without. But the loss was my body can't do. I can no longer bend at my waist all the way down. I can't do, prostrations. I have to have a cushion under my hips to do things. And so there's, body loss. And I caught myself about to compare myself. It was okay. I compared to the body I used to have, but I almost went to comparing to the youth in the room. Eyes are closed, thankfully, in this practice. And I saw it come up and I went, oh, how foolish, and so it was so much easier to let go of that comparing mind that has caused me suffering for so much of my life, and of not being as good as or even enough. And so I'm finding through our practice here that, I really I don't for myself go to what ifs very often. I tend to have to stop myself when I have a daughter who's in a transitional place in her life, that the future is always unknown, but because of the circumstances, an anxiety can arise, and I want to go to, but what if? And I have to go, it's not happening now. And I believe that holding that, then the vastness of what potentials of actions will be greater than if I go down that, well, if this happens, then I can help, or she can do. And so I'm just seeing the avijja arise. I kind of smile now.
I started house hunting this week again after like a 6-month break. And the highs and lows were very big. Like I wanted this one house so much. And I knew my realtor didn't like it. It was very clear she didn't like it. And it had a lot of problems. And I even tell people I love this house, but it has so many problems. But then 2 days later, I'm like, what was I thinking? That house has a lot of problems. But I find that this is happening with like a lot of them that I look at. I'm just so in, I'm 100%. And that day after I looked at that one, I got home, I couldn't even move. I was so mentally exhausted. I couldn't do anything. And that's part of it. It's like the whole mental piece of it. And yeah, it's just up and down, up.
So on the 14th, I'm heading down past Publix, and I see Nancy's coming the other way. And she doesn't see me, luckily. And so it's the Valentine's Day. And there's a chocolate store down there. You turn it left off of Publix. And I said, I bet she's gone there, but I'll get some chocolates anyway. So we get home. We now have 24 chocolates to consume. But there's a lot of good dark chocolates. Mine, I love dark chocolates. And so I'm enjoying it Then today I there's no more dark chocolates left that are really, I had to have a milk chocolate caramel. And it was like, well, golly. And so that just the anticipation of that dark chocolate pleasure, and then realizing it's no longer there. And we're forcing ourselves to finish off these chocolates. Darn it, we're not going to let these things go any longer. I'm going to have 4 today. because this is a chore now. So this thing which was a pleasure with dark chocolates, one here or one there, is now turned into a chore to finish these things off and get them off the counter.
I'll help you out.
So praise and blame sounds like it probably was in there for a little bit.
Mhm.
And pleasure and pain, loss, the dark chocolates are gone. And we're kind of smiling and laughing because probably we've all at some point been there. This morning I thought, oh, I have toast with a hard-boiled egg and some avocado. And I opened the fridge and no avocado.
No egg.
No, I had an egg. I had a hard-boiled egg, which was fine. I toasted up my toast. I went and it was like, now I've just been spending the last 24 hours preparing for this 8 worldly winds. And there I am standing with the door open, looking at and then I'm looking and saying, and is it over? No, I spent time with this. I had my egg and a piece of toast. I was very happy. But there was this moment. Who ate all the avocados? Why don't we have any more? I mean, it just can take you. And we catch it. But there's those moments, or maybe longer than those moments. The Buddha said these 8 worldly winds, praise, blame, gain, loss, and pleasure and pain, success and failure, ceaselessly change. They're constantly changing. The 8 worldly winds also concerns the attachments and aversions. Attachments and aversions that yoke us to samsara and dukkha. Even if it's the slightest bit of dukkha. That's what this world is. Samsara is the 8 worldly winds. The Buddha wanted us to recognize these states and that they are present in our current incarnation, the samsaric world. And mostly, and gratefully, they're impermanent. Eventually, Sarah, you found truth in the house that had all these issues. But the journey that you went on during the time that you saw that, and before, and then after even, it sounds like, the journey that we go on, we are attached to that aversion at some level. When we cling to one, we try to push away the other. So we're clinging to gain and pushing away loss. The dark chocolate's gone. So sad. Disappointing. Because it's such pleasure. I have to say, I would eat the milk chocolate. Gratefully, my monastic sisters are dark chocolate eaters. It's important that we find compassion first for ourselves and then for others. Here's what the Buddha had to say about the subject, and it's from the Lokavipata Sutta. Monks, these 8 worldly conditions spin after the world, and the world spins after these 8 worldly conditions. Which 8? Gain, loss, status, disgrace, censure, praise, pleasure, and pain. These are the 8 worldly conditions that spin after the world, and the world spins after these 8 worldly conditions. I think that's such a wonderful concept of spinning, because when you're caught in that, it is a spinning. It is a spinning. For an uninstructed run-of-the-mill person, there arise gain, loss, status, grace, disgrace, censure, praise, pleasure, and pain. For a well-instructed disciple of the noble ones, there also arise gain, loss, status, disgrace, censure, praise, pleasure, and pain. So whether you're instructed or uninstructed, they exist. They exist. So what difference What distinguishing factor is there between the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones and the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person? For us, Lord, the teachings have the Blessed One as their root, their guide, and their arbitrator. It would be good if the Blessed One himself would explicate the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from the Blessed One, the monks will remember it. In that case, monks, listen and pay close attention. I will speak. As you say, Lord, the monks responded. The Blessed One said, gain arises from an uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person. He does not reflect gain has arisen for me. It is inconsistent, stressful, and subject to change. He does not discern it as it actually is. Loss arises, status arises, disgrace arises, censure arises, praise arises, pleasure arises, pain arises. He does not reflect, pain has arisen for me. It is inconsistent, stressful, and subject to change. He does not discern it as it actually is. His mind remains consumed with them, with the gain. His mind remains consumed with the loss, with the status, the disgrace, the censure, the praise, the pleasure. His mind remains consumed with the pain. He welcomes the unarisen gain and rebels against the arisen loss. He welcomes the arisen status and rebels against the arisen disgrace. He welcomes the arisen praise and rebels against the arisen censure. He welcomes the arisen pleasure and rebels against the arisen pain. It's a lot of work. As he is thus engaged in welcoming and rebelling, he is not released from birth, aging, or death, from sorrows, lamentations, pains, distresses, or despairs. He is not released, I tell you, from suffering and stress. Now gain arises for a well-instructed disciple of the noble ones. He reflects, gain has arisen for me. It is inconsistent, stressful, and subject to change. He discerns it as it actually is. Welcome. Pain arises. He reflects pain as arisen for me. It is inconsistent, stressful, and subject to change. He discerns it as it actually is. His mind does not remain consumed with the gain. His mind does not remain consumed with the loss, with the status, the disgrace, the censure, the praise, the pleasure. His mind does not remain consumed with the pain. That is the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones. He does not welcome the arisen gain or rebel against the arisen loss. He does not welcome the arisen status or rebel against the arisen disgrace. He does not welcome the arisen praise or rebel against the arisen censure. He does not welcome the arisen pleasure or rebel against the arisen pain, and thus abandons welcoming and rebelling. He is released from birth, aging, and death, from sorrows, lamentations, pains, distresses, and despairs. He is released, I tell you, from suffering and stress. This is the difference. This is the distinction. This is the distinguishing factor between the well-instructed disciple of the noble ones and the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person. Gain, loss, status, disgrace, censure, praise, pleasure, pain. These conditions among human beings are inconstant, impermanent, subject to change. Knowing this, the wise person, mindful, ponders these changing conditions. Desirable things don't charm the mind. Undesirable ones bring no resistance. His welcoming and rebellion are scattered, gone to their end, do not exist. Knowing the dustless, sorrowless state he discerns rightly, has gone beyond becoming to the further shore. Yeah.
So I turned 53 on Wednesday. I think there's this great opportunity to really, not that we shouldn't do it every day, but to really look back. And when we talk about impermanence and loss and gain, I was never a pretty girly girl, but looking at myself in the mirror as time has gone on has made me go, yeah, I'm liking that less and less. However, the joy of being able to go, and yet my body can still run up the mountain I live on. I can still do planks off the driveway. And that there are things that have, the rumination is gone, the motor tics are gone. That was impermanent in my life. And that took 53 years of daily development to come and go for me. And to look at myself in the mirror is not like a pleasure fest, but to be able to recognize, and yet in the immediacy, your body is doing more now than it might have been able to do 53, years into the making, had you not have made some of the decisions you made, and to really recognize the gratitude and impermanence of all that, and to look at that as a celebration versus anything else for me right there is a profound shift for me. And like I told Panadipa once, one of the great joys of impermanence is that we lose our vision. You can't see yourself in the mirror as much anymore. And he started laughing and said, yeah, that's probably true too, because you start to just see what's readily important and the rest no longer matters. Just press and hold it and hold it like that.
That second bit you were sharing tweaks my interest, where there's one sense you're with your own experience with these winds, and then when you add other, and then a conversation I had with my mother on Tuesday, so you're tracking someone who's in the world, but not necessarily a woman of spirit. Not that they don't have spirit, but these things in the world are compelling. So my mom calls, actually it was a little late. So my own internal thing was like, oh, it was 9:30, it's a little late for a phone call. And then I was assuaged that she had just watched a basketball game and was interested in sharing her experience. So, it was all right. But I did, my own experience was a little trepidation of, this is sort of an odd, little late phone call. Quickly got assuaged. And then she had watched the Clemson basketball game, which at some point I haven't, it was weird. I was in a place that the beginnings of the game were on, and then I left that place. And I did have some interest in how the game ended. And then this person who had a little more engagement actually filled me in on what happened for the rest of the game. So it was interesting that, there's maybe our minds are a little more connected to what we're engaged in than we realize. And then they won. And that in that category would be a good thing. And I was like, okay. Then she brought up games they lost, but they should have won. Oh, that's interesting. And then she brought up home games, which you're normally supposed to win, that they lost. So just the tracking in real time of how dynamic it needs to really be. And it's a roller coaster, but you're steadying it, and you want to keep that even keel while the person brings up woo, and then something they didn't like. So that scene sort of receded, and then she brought up she still has a lot of bodily pain, and she's looking at another operation to put electrode in. That the person she's talking to was like, oh, the technology is better now. oh, that's very nice. Maybe it'll be better than my last experience. And, so track that. And then like, okay, all right. And then she's like, oh, I went to a physical therapy pool. Oh, I'm like, oh, that's a good thing. She's moving, getting moving the energy and took some initiative, not to just sit around. And but then she's like, well, they had a new girl who was trying to schedule, and it was very frustrating to find another time for me to come back to the pool. I was like, oh, okay, all right, still tracking, watching and observing and getting a sense of the roller coaster of an actual person's real experience as it goes through the vicissitudes of life. It's like, oh, good. And then I don't know if a TV is impermanent, but my mom had a TV issue, 2 TVs, but the one she has, she couldn't watch right now. And it was because she put new programming in, and it was beyond her capacity to create circumstances where she could watch it how she would like it again. But then my sister was going to come tomorrow and be the fixer of this issue. I was like, oh, that's very nice.
So you can see how these external factors have impacted not only her, but the people around her. You, your sister, people that she meets, the person that's scheduling, and the winds that come in as a result of these factors, and how we're impacted, how they infuse their power into us if we're not aware, if we're not paying attention. Thank you for that. So what do we do with these? Let's take a deeper look at the Lokivipata Sutta that teaches us how to be unshakable amid life's ups and downs. Now, as people who are studying the Dharma, we'd like to think, we got this pretty well. We're pretty good at this. Until something big happens. Or maybe not so big happens. Maybe out of what they say left field. Unexpectedly. Then what happens? The Buddha offers a teaching that guides us in our efforts to develop equanimity. Now, remember, equanimity was something a while back that I spent a whole Dharma talk on in terms of the 4 Brahma Viharas, and mentioned that equanimity is the foundation of the other 3. Equanimity is steadiness of mind, unshakableness, imperturbability. Think back to this last week, maybe even yesterday, maybe even this morning. Did you have steadiness of mind? Did you find moments of unshakability? What was going on? What external factors presented themselves? Now, probably most of us here have a range of not getting it, not getting it, not getting it, and then getting it. Sometimes it comes quicker than other times, depending on the day, what's going on in our lives, what happened the moment before. We often discuss equanimity with these 4 immeasurables that we can't get to the other 3 without having that equanimity. A Theravada monk and Pali translator Thanissaro Bhikkhu defines equanimity as an attitude of even-mindedness in the face of every sort of experience, regardless of whether pleasure and pain are present. That's a tall order. When we have equanimity, we remain balanced. It's a mark of progress in Dharma practice. So those moments when you haven't been equanimous, do you feel a lack of balance? You feel like the earth is moving. How does it show up for you? That's where you pay attention. Because we're in samsara, we are going to always have the 4 or the 8 worldly winds. We always will. It's not that they won't exist, that if I get to a certain point, unless we get to liberation, we will always have them. In the sutta, the Buddha speaks about 8 worldly wind conditions, or also known as the 8 vicissitudes. These are the conditions that we're apt to get thrown by. They tend to make us lose our center. The Buddha says they're conditioned that the world spins after. At the beginning of the sutta, the Buddha makes a key point. All human beings declares are subject to these worldly conditions. The run-of-the-mill person who is uninstructed in Dharma practice, as well as the well-instructed disciple of the Buddha's teachings, we may be inclined to believe that as we practice the Dharma, we'll no longer have to deal with these disagreeable experiences. But we know that's not the case. So the Buddha asks, what is the difference between the person who doesn't follow the path and the dedicated Dharma student? For starters, the uninstructed person doesn't recognize when the 8 vicissitudes have arisen. As we said, as I mentioned earlier, we get blindsided. He isn't mindful. He doesn't reflect. He doesn't practice discernment. He doesn't recognize that when gain or loss arise, it's simply a reflection of the way it is. Life happens outside of ourselves. The run-of-the-mill person doesn't understand that the agreeable conditions by their nature will change, that they are impermanent. Eventually, in the place of experience of pleasure, there will be an experience of pain. In the place of experience of praise, there'll be a censure of blame. When the uninstructed person is faced with these worldly conditions, he becomes overwrought, obsessed. As the Buddha puts it, his mind remains consumed with the experiences of the 8 vicissitudes. We all know what that's like. Oftentimes, it's a smaller, less consequential situation. In the scheme of things, some people say in the first world, it's a minor problem. We may find ourselves caught in fast-moving currents of thinking. We may appreciate and enjoy pleasurable winds, and we find ourselves again and again lost in thought about what has transpired. So we get impacted by a vicissitude of life. Something happens. The chocolate is gone. The TV doesn't work. Someone cuts you off. The boss gives you hell. Something happens. And it lingers, and it lingers, and it lingers, and creating more pain and more agony. What is the nature of our fixation? The run-of-the-mill person welcomes the arisen gain, status, praise, and pleasure, but he engages with the other side of that. He thinks about how he might hold on to the agreeable experience and perpetuate those agreeable conditions. Meanwhile, the uninstructed rebels against the disagreeable experience of loss, disgrace, censure, and pain. He proliferates with that aversion. He may be barraged with thoughts, worry, despair. There's suffering. The Buddha says he's not released from suffering and stress, the uninstructed. But the well-instructed disciple, the Buddha teaches, maintains equanimity in response to the 8 worldly conditions. She isn't thrown off balance. She remains centered, at ease, composed. The beauty of instruction and practice is that over time we notice that we're not thrown off balance as quickly. We might be thrown off balance, but the turnaround is quicker. She recognizes, the instructed disciple recognizes the pleasure and the pain. Part of my metta practice is when I hear a siren, I pause and wish the responders and wherever they're going well-being. Thank you. The Dharma student doesn't let his mind remain consumed with his good fortune or bad fortune. Pays attention to his thinking. Questions the usefulness in engaging in the thinking. Is this necessary? Do I need to continue this way of thought? Understands there is such suffering and is welcoming even the rebellion. The well-trained Dharma student learns to direct her attention to the quality of equanimity inside her. Equanimity is a quality that is innate in human beings. It's inner strength. We all have it. It's a matter of touching in and finding it and being with it. The Buddha, in teaching equanimity to his son Rahula, told him to develop a mind like the earth. The earth, the Buddha explained, is subject to all manner of disagreeable experience. Rain, snow, ice, wind. People throw all sorts of unclean things on it, but the earth isn't horrified. It isn't shaken. When conditions are agreeable, when the weather is pleasant, the earth doesn't become exhilarated. It keeps steady day after day, season after season. Nature, in fact, offers many examples of equanimity. It is one of the reasons the Buddha recommended going into nature. Recognizing the equanimity there, we recognize the equanimity inside ourselves. So for those of you that do walk out into nature, whether it's over at Carl Sandburg or in the area, there's lots of wonderful areas in the neighborhoods around here, to really appreciate what the lessons are being given from the trees and the shrubs and the plants. The Dharma student keeps her center by putting her mind on her breath. And we know that the breath is what can stabilize us, especially if we're not breathing into the chest, because that can be more of a trauma response and keep us from engaging the other organs. The Dharma student develops equanimity, puts her efforts into, as the sutta indicates, towards getting to the further shore. The Buddha wanted us to recognize that all these states are present in our current incarnation, that suffering is causal. Suffering is causal, arising through both attachment and aversion. When we cling to one and try to push away the other, that all 8 states are important teachers, helping us to find compassion with ourselves and others. So how do we find serenity when we're caught in storms? So what do we do when the going gets tough and the winds are whipping us around? What's your go-to place? Do you have a go-to place? I would venture to say equanimity is the first step. Acceptance to that place is the start. To look at the spaciousness and balance, quieting the mind, allowing those storms of thought to settle and dissolve. As I've mentioned, I did mindfulness in the schools when I was working, and I should have brought one, but I took a mason jar and I put glitter in it and put the top in. And when you shake it up, it's a storm of glitter and you really can't see through it. It's all over the place. It's crazy. But if you wait, the glitter settles. And so I would frequently have students burst into my office. They left the classroom, burst into the office, and they would pick up that mason jar and shake it. I feel like this, they'd say. And I would say, I see. And that's all I would say. And they'd set it down and sit down. And I said, when you're ready, we can talk. And they would just watch. And that in itself, watching that glitter settle, is calming. And when it would calm, their voice was different. It wasn't, assertive or frustrated. It wasn't any of that. It was, I was really upset. And I would just listen. And the blame that came through the door of whoever upset this person was no longer there in that way. It was still there, but it wasn't there in that way. And it was only at that point that we could have a conversation. I used to tell the story when I first got my dog, my last dog, Otis. He was just a little fur ball, and I took him to work. I worked in an alternative school. Kids that weren't making it in regular school. And he would be in my office because he was so tiny and I was able to bring him. And I would have kids, they were high school kids, come in. And I had one in particular that is notable. And she picked up Otis and put it in her lap. And she was rubbing him and petting him. And he was like, and she was telling me about what the teacher did. And and then all of a sudden, after a few minutes, I just watched him to make sure he was going to be okay. But after some time, she settled down. And he got to settle down. He remained in the lap. And pretty soon the petting got softer and gentler. And the story was told with a different voice. If we can skillfully look at what happens in our world through the lens of impermanence, now we hear the lines, this too shall pass. And we think, yeah. Because when we're really upregulated, when we're really incensed about something, and we do get there, we're human. We don't see anything about impermanence about this until our whole system can settle. And that's where the breath can come in. The Buddha was clear in his instructions and even divided them into the categories on purpose. He wanted to help us clearly see that with one, you get the other. Always. The storm will move on. And our decisions in the midst will have created another storm if we do what we think we need to do at that moment. The storm moves on. But if we stay stuck in that moment of upheaval, of dysregulation, of upset, then it's very likely we may make decisions in that moment that will impact us, either in what we say, what we do, how we feel, body, speech, and mind. Always something to keep in the front. When those storms come in, we get a blast of something, and often it's out here as well. Our minds are wired to seek safety, and that's an attachment. We want safety, calm, especially in that moment. We're aversive to pain, and that's emotional or physical. 2 years ago, I had a hip replacement, a knee replacement, and a year later, another knee replacement. Now I'm slowly running out of body parts to be replaced, but physical pain. And I understand that as we grow older, I've been preparing for a retreat I plan to give in April on aging, illness, and death, and that our bodies will slow down and our bodies will give way. Now, not everyone. I have a friend whose father is 90 and he's out bicycling and doing all sorts of things. Most of us start not doing those kinds of things that, Dina, you've been talking about as the 60s and 70s and 80s start coming around. We do them not harder, we do them differently. We do them differently. We do cling to pleasure, gain, praise, and fame. And we battle the opposites until we start paying attention. Still, we notice. When I was teaching mindfulness with the kids, one of the things I really focused on was, where in your body do you feel this? Where in your body? And when we hear, our sense gates hear, or see, or smell, or taste, or touch one of the winds, it's likely we're going to have some sort of response. Not always a great one. Jack Cornfield puts it this way: what do you get when you hang on? Anybody know the answer to what he says? Rope burn. Rope burn. That to me is such a great visual. Anybody here had rope burn? Hurts. A friend of mine had a golden retriever. They purchased it because my golden retriever is calm and sedate. Well, their dog was not that. It was a golden retriever that looked like my golden retriever. She was definitely not calm, and she was busy and active. So they're going out the door, and the dog saw a squirrel, and away the dog went, and away my friend went, holding on to that leash, and got incredible burn, ended up having to go to the hospital. She hung on and hung on and hung on. How often do we hang on to the rope to the point that we're injured, either emotionally or physically? So recognizing impermanence is one way to fight the storms or to find serenity in the storms. Another way is the sacred pause. Now, you all know that I often talk about the pause. And Viktor Frankl, who you all know, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So I often speak of the pause when our bodies are upset. Certainly something I taught the young ones. To stop. To stop. Now, with little ones, it's about usually someone said something or looked at them the wrong way, or, the pencil broke, but it's not just that always. And we talked about taking that pause and doing the breath. And I was able to observe out on the playground that it began to work. And those little bodies, when they were upset that they didn't get the ball, or they fell off the slide, and they would truly stand up, take a breath, and wait. And then they go play again. You could learn a lot from those young children. Another way is to dance in the rain. Recognize that we're not in control of most external factors. The very core of the teaching in the sutta, the Buddha encourages us that we are not defined by these states. Let me say that again. We are not defined by these states. That to me is huge, because we can take ownership of those states. We can own those states. We can carry those states. But you know what? We're not defined by them. We can let them go. Our reactions often stem from fear. If we really dig down into what's going on, there often, somewhere down beneath, is a state of fear. In those moments, if we can ask, what is my intention? Am I chasing one of these states? Are they arising out of fear? We can truly be intentional and wise in our reactions. You may have heard the story of Venerable Ajahn Chah, who, when walking through the forest with a few novice monks, pointed out a large boulder to the side. He asked, "Is it heavy?" "Well, yes," they replied. And he said, "Not if you don't pick it up. Not if you don't pick it up." So we have a choice. We have a big choice. How to embody generosity of spirit, a willingness to let go. How to not even bother to pick it up. To assess that it's too big in the first place. How many times have you picked something up and you felt your back give? Or at least twinge? Do we even stop to think, is this a good thing? Ajahn Chah stated, "Do everything with a mind that lets go. If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace." You know, we hear this and we say, "Oh, yes, yes, yes." And then we promptly forget it. Sometimes I choose to say, lay it down. Sometimes letting it go feels a little big, because you know what? It can come back. But if you lay it down, no need. So what about embracing the winds of change? There's a section in the Dhammapada in which the Buddha says, "Live in joy and freedom, even amongst those who are sick or troubled. Live in joy and a peaceful heart, even among those in conflict. Quiet the mind and heart and find the sweet joy of living in the Dharma." And that's the key, isn't it? As we continue to do our work, as we continue to do our study, as we continue to step out into the Dharma. To the Buddha, I return and rely. To the Dharma, I return and rely. To the Sangha, I return and rely. Let's spend a little more time cultivating equanimity amid the 8 worldly winds. Do you see how equanimity shows up in your life? Can you revisit this last week and look at times when equanimity was your friend, when you allowed it to be present, when you allowed it to be available to you? to calm those winds. The Buddhist writings, there's two meanings of equanimity. The first is the ability to maintain an inner balance and calm, no matter what may be happening around us. The second is about observation and the ability to see and understand the whole situation. So even if we can't step into equanimity, if we can maybe step back and just look at the situation and take that breath. And if we can't take the moment ourselves, perhaps we have a good Dharma friend that is there to support you. I certainly do. I certainly do. The Pali term equanimity is called upekkha, which means balance. And its characteristic is an arrest of the mind before it falls into extremes. Now that's a vision. Catching that before it falls into extremes. Equanimity is a spacious stillness of the mind, a radiant calm that allows us to be present fully with all the different changing experiences that constitute our world and our lives. Training in equanimity is learning to open the door to all and welcome all beings, inviting life to come visit. Isn't that just the opposite of what we think we want to do, especially when the wind is really blowing? Certain guests arrive, will feel fear and aversion. Others open the door just a crack, and we slam the door hard. We aspire to spend our lives training in loving kindness and courage that it takes to receive whatever appears. And so, of course, I will share my favorite poem by Rumi. This human being is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Explore how equanimity manifests in our lives and when it's absent. Here are a few questions I would like for you to consider. When are you able to cultivate equanimity in your life? When are you able to cultivate equanimity in your life? When do you notice the absence of equanimity? How do you practice to restore your equanimity? So, of course, we need to consider the three karmas of body, speech, and mind. And that karma is not just about physical, but it's about emotional. And it encompasses intentions as well as mental states beyond the actions. Those mental states that we carry with us. Sometimes they lapse, then they come rushing back in on occasion. So mindfulness is an integral practice to really integrate the speech and navigating the worldly winds. And here are some ideas of how you can implement mindfulness, recognize reactions, and break the cycle of attachment and aversion. So first, it's recognizing the worldly winds, not just knowing what they are, but know how they manifest for you or when they manifest at all. Ways to manage that is cultivate the present moment awareness. Train your mind to be fully present in the current moment. Whether in meditation or daily activities, bring your attention to the sensations, thoughts, and emotions arising in the present. We all go blasting through the day. Some days we're more mindful than others. We're more attentive than others, more aware than other days. And often, we charge through the day. Observe the worldly winds. Develop a non-judgmental mind, a non-judgmental awareness. Notice how the experiences are impermanent and subject to change. Label and note. Practice labeling or noting the worldly winds as they manifest. Ah, there is praise. There is blame. When facing criticism, when facing success, note it as what it is. This will allow you to have some distance to what's going on. The next step is to develop awareness of reactions and responses. Observe your emotional responses. Pay attention to your reactions to the worldly winds as they arrive. Is there a tendency to grasp, resist? Be aware of those emotions as they come up. Mindfully reflect. Something that I'm sure we all do. Certainly I reflect, try to reflect at least 3 times a day. Starting out in the morning, how do I want to be? Midday, how am I doing? The end of the day, how did I do? Sometimes just body scans, what I taught the kids. Notice in your body, what is the tendency? Where does it grab you? Where do you get stuck? I've often shared it's in my gut. And if I don't pay attention, it moves up to my chest. And my breathing gets shallow. And by the time it gets to my jaw and my neck and my face gets hot, I've passed the point. Sometimes of no return. Not often anymore, but sometimes. Pause and breathe. You don't even have to be in a worldly wind to do that. You can do that throughout your day. Don't identify with what's coming at you. Oftentimes, it's not even about you. Someone cuts you off in the road, probably not about you. The other day, I was on Asheville Highway and a car was right on my bumper. And he'd go to the side, he couldn't get over here, he'd go to the side, he couldn't get over here. And I'm watching, thinking, oh, what am I getting? You know, and finally he got in, whew, around he went, back into the lane, only to hit the red light and have to stop. Now, there was a tendency for me to say, but I didn't. My father would say, where do you think he's going so fast? The fear was there for me because I was afraid he was going to do something really not good. Don't identify with what's coming at you. Cultivate that equanimity. Cultivate a balanced mind. And be mindful of your decision making. You know, in the parenting piece that I used to use when I was in the schools, we often advise, and I would often use that when I was working with staff. If you need to know now, the answer is no. I need to respond right now. I used to always say, if there's blood, otherwise I'm not gonna do anything right now. That was when I was in the schools, but I don't always need to respond right away. Let me think about that. Let me sit on that. Let me sleep on that. I don't need to respond right away. That will help you make more conscious and mindful decisions. I'd like to offer us a few minutes of meditation, of meditation on the worldly winds. So let's settle back into this moment. Find a supportive posture. Feel your feet on the floor, your back against the back of the chair, your bottom on the seat of the chair. You can visualize your upper body from your waist up, reaching towards the sky like a tree. Now allow the lower part of your body to root down to the earth. Feel the aliveness in your body in this moment as you ground into the earth and grow upwards to the sky. Notice the breathing. Notice the breath as it comes through your nostrils and out. In and out. Allow your whole body, your whole being to simply be at rest. Now, as you're resting and breathing, notice that there's a Buddhist wheel with 8 spokes in a hole in the center. This is a common wheel that is shown in many Dharma centers. In those cases, the spoke often refers to the Eightfold Path because there's 8 spokes. The spokes also can be seen as the 8 worldly winds. So let yourself sit in the center of the wheel, in that empty space where you can observe all 8 worldly winds blowing in and out. Though the wheel turns and turns, the eye of the wheel is still, like the eye of a storm. And that's where you are. You observe the circumstances of your life, the losses, the gains, the pleasure, the pain. But you are beginning to get free from attachment and aversion to these things. Breathe deeply and let yourself rest in the still center, jumping off the endless and exhausting hamster wheel for a time. Open yourself up and rest there. And now you see yourself as a wave on the ocean. You rise up out of the water and begin to move quickly. And there are also other waves around you. The other waves around you are moving more slowly. You feel special because you can go faster. But then a huge wave comes by, dwarfing you and passing you by, making you feel small and insignificant. But you and the slower waves, and you and the faster, bigger waves are actually of the same nature. Let go of your waveform and go beneath the surface and sink down, down, down. Now you are ready to rest into the embrace of the ocean, and you touch the truth of your nature as water. Here there is not fast or slow, big or small. There is just water. The same substance that makes up the waves that were slower than you, and the wave that was bigger than you. There is no more you, because now you're just water. Let yourself enjoy being immense, vast, empty, empty of a separate self, content to contain everything around you. As we end today, I'd like to share a song with you, if we can make it happen.
Well, sing at the top of your voice. Love without fear in your heart. Feel like you still have a choice. If we all light up, we can scare away the dark. Wish our weekdays away, spend our weekends in bed. We drink ourselves stupid and work ourselves dead, and all just because that's what mum and dad said we should do. We should run through the forests, we should swim in the streams, we should laugh, we should cry, we should love, we should dream, we should stare at the stars and not just at screens. You should hear what I'm saying and know what it means to sing. Sing at the top of your voice. Love without fear in your heart, no. Feel like you still have a choice. If we all light up, we can scare away the dark. Well, we wish we were happier, thinner and fitter. We wish we weren't losers and liars and quitters. We want something more, not just nasty and bitter. We want something real, not just hashtags and Twitter. It's the meaning of life, and it's streamed live on YouTube. But I bet Gangnam Style will still get more views. Or we're scared of drowning and flying in shooters. But we're all slowly dying in front of computers. So sing at the top of your voice now. Oh, love without fear in your heart. Can you feel like you still have a choice? If we all light up, we can scare away the dark now.
Someone like to give the merit today?
Is it on? Is it on? Yes. As we continue to ride the waves and winds, may we sit long enough for the glitter to settle and in unity radiate like the sun unhindered by the clouds, walking each other in a path of love and compassion for ourselves and others.
Thank you, everyone.